Hello and welcome to the Vital Red Pill. Today we try to answer once again why the French are protesting and why we only see pictures from Paris in the news while the protests are going on countrywide. This episode is mainly based on a German radio interview with Isabelle Bourgeois, a French media expert, original link in description. An interview that was densely packed with razor-sharp information and insights into the Yellow Vest movement, information that had to be shared with the world. And that is what I will do now. Written on the 15th of December 2018. At first, she gave some insights into the typical French discussion culture. While in other countries, for example Germany, two parties first have a discussion, and only if the discussion is not fruitful, only then one party starts to demonstrate or strike in public. But in France, it's the other way around. The French people first go to the streets, and only afterwards they sit down at a table to discuss their demands. So that is why the French people love protesting so much. It's just a normal way they do negotiations. It's their step one. This means that the Yellow Vests so far are just acting according to local customs. Nothing illegal or special here. For the second point, one needs to understand France as a country. France was for a long time ruled by one strong king from a palace near Paris. This means that the whole country had one heart and one brain, and both resided in Paris. If you wanted to get anything done, you had to go to Paris. Paris became the political, cultural, economical center of France. Some French say that there are even two countries in France. One is Paris, and the other one is everything outside of Paris. That big of a difference exists between Paris and the rest of France. From the 10 best universities of France, 6 are located in Paris. A lot of taxes that are collected in the whole of France are spent in Paris, be it for art museums or for other important projects. Also, every of the major French newspapers have their headquarters in, you guess it, Paris. One of these newspapers is literally owned by Rothschild. The French media expert went so far as to say that the not Paris-based newspapers only fulfill the role of reporting who died, proper English term here, obituary. The same is also true for most of the French TV channels. They are all based in Paris. As a thought experiment, just imagine that all the US newspapers and TV channels would have their headquarters in Washington. The nation's leading newspapers would be the famous Pennsylvania Avenue Journal, the Washington Times, the Washington Tribune, the Washington Post, the Washington Times No. 2, the Washington Post No. 2, the Washington Newsday, the Washington News, the Washington Times No. 3, and of course the Washington Tribune No. 2. Just imagine the diversity of ideas that would exist in a world where those are the main leading newspapers. The media expert also states clearly that these media houses are part of the Parisian elite. Those newspapers and TV stations broadcast their Parisian view of things to the whole country, a country that is way bigger than Paris alone. A country where not everybody can just simply leave their car at home and take the metro to go to work. People outside of Paris are not stupid and got fed up with the mainstream media and mostly only use social media to get their news nowadays, especially those beneath 30 years old. Madame Bourgeois said to take a map of the French high-speed train tracks, the TGV. All the areas that are not covered by these tracks are the areas that are upset by the elitists in Paris. Elitists that think that ordering new porcelain plates for 500,000 euros is fine and totally justified. The people are, to say it lightly, displeased by the way the Parisian elites waste their hard-earned money. An elite is so out of touch that literally thinks that offering the people 100 euro more would solve the problem. An elite that thanks the police for their professional work over the weekends. Work that got an innocent 80-year-old woman killed while she was trying to close her blinds in her apartment room. Professional work of illegally shooting projectiles at the heads of protesters and costing the eyes of, for example, this 20-year-old girl. Professional work of employing hand grenades with 30 grams of TNT on protesters. That is half the amount of TNT used in US grenades during the Second World War. Grenades that blew some people's heads into pieces. None of these things were mentioned by Macron during his speech, because he is living in a different world than most of the French people are. But why did the people vote for him in the first place? Well, simply said, because the other option was literally Hitler. That is why the people are angry at the system and at Macron. The guy that was sold during the election as the man of the people, the underdog who will change things up, the guy who under-delivered on his promises and thus destroyed the last bit of approval the French people had for their government. The gas tax was just a final straw in a line of degrading actions coming from Paris. As Anon stated, it can be summarized with, "Let them drive cake." This explains the low ratings of Mr. Macron, currently at only 18%. Something that is quite surprising for me is the official high support rate of the Yellow Vests as reported in French media. The numbers are as high as 70 or 80%. Not those highest numbers are surprising, but the fact that those numbers are reported, truly. A survey agency has a lot of power, as it can, by changing the precise wording of a question and other small adjustments, steer the result of any survey. And thus, by reporting on the result of a manipulative survey, newspapers can control the public discourse on any certain topic. Manipulative questions as, for example, "Do you support the action of the Yellow Vests causing X million of damages in Paris this weekend? Oui or non, monsieur?" Those kinds of specially carefully crafted questions are then used to give very general answers, as for example, "Based on our very special questions, we now conclude that the support for the Yellow Vest movement has fallen by 20%. You get the idea. But this time, to my big surprise, it did not happen. How could it be that those critical instruments of control did not distort the reality at this critical moment for the elites? Or did they already try to distort the results but only managed to get a few percentage points off? Interesting times indeed. Very interesting times. Now to the third point. Why do so many people protest in Paris? Why did so many travel to Paris over the weekend only to protest there? I would like to remember you that most of the people in Paris are quite content with the government and do not wear yellow vests. The answer for that question is simple: media exposure. As we have learned, in France, before you negotiate, you should first protest on the streets. But as the question goes, if a tree falls in the forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? The analogy here would be, if one protests on the streets, but there's no reporter to report it, does the protest still count? Because every important media is in Paris, the protesters had to come to Paris. And what better way of getting seen than showing numbers at the Arc de Triomphe in Paris? Those pictures were too sexy for the media to not to show them. Thus, in this regard, the movement succeeded at their goal of showing face in the lion's den, at showing their true numbers to the media. And that would also logically explain the harsh and brutal reaction of the French police forces. Their goal is to make sure that nobody would ever like to protest in Paris ever again, a strategy that most likely succeeded in the past, as when promptly implemented it's quite maliciously brilliant. A, because the media will only report on the violence against the police and show burning cars. It will not report on the police violence conducted against the protesters. The goal here is to frame the protesters as bad guys and the police as the good guys, while on the other side using brutal force against the protesters. Force not strong enough to straight out kill you, no, but strong enough to induce massive pain or even heavy brutal injuries. Injuries that of course will never be reported in the mainstream media, but injuries that the protesters will tell and show to other protesters. The goal here being is to put the following question into the minds of the protesters. Do I really want to risk my life for that cause? Or maybe should I stay at home and eat omelette du fromage? Also, most parents only consuming mainstream media will tell their children to stay at home and not risk their life for this stupid cause. Mainstream media that by only showing selected acts of violence present the police as having the moral high ground. Selective control that is quite successful. You for sure have seen burning cars on the news. But did you hear about the death of the 80-year-old lady that died after being hit with a tear gas grenade in the face? This small fact was not mentioned in the mainstream news. The problems that they are facing now are the following: the massive loss of credibility of the mainstream media, as well as the rising of the social media like WhatsApp, Twitter and Facebook. social media where the videos of police brutality cannot be simply erased. This loss of control of the public discourse can be seen very well in the French Twitter of Monsieur Macron. Here we can see him being compared to Hitler. Hitler said the same thing in 1945 while hiding in his bunker. We all know how that story ended. As well as seeing people raising questions on all those acts of police brutality that are not reported on mainstream media. No words for your victim seriously injured and some even totally disfigured? Furthermore, no words of the 20-year-old student who lost her left eye yesterday? Fuck. Hashtag Macron resigned, hashtag revolution, hashtag yellow vest, hashtag president of the rich, hashtag house cleaning. And what about the 80-year-old elderly lady in Marseille, who wanted to protect herself from the tear gas outside and wanted to close the blinds of her window when she got hit in her face by the grenade? She died soon after, and it was declared from above that it was not that grenade that killed her. No more words needed. An interesting thing here is that foreign media, for example RT, is reporting on those brutal happenings. This fact is being used by the panicked French media to report that Russian media is trying to discredit our government and those damn Ruskies are behind it all again, just like in the Cold War. Come on, guys, believe us. We're the good guys here, yeah? Okay, good, yeah, believe us? My counter-argument here is a very simple one. How weak is a government that is on the brink of collapse as soon as somebody simply reports the truth? Is the emperor truly wearing new clothes? Or does your simple mass hypnosis collapse when a tiny group of people tell the truth and awaken the others? This fact was also approached by the French media expert. She told the reporter straight to the face that this movement is by the people, for the people, against those people in Paris. Yes, there are some fake news revolving around the movement, but majority of the movement is not steered from the outside and is very natural. It was very pleasant for me to hear that kinds of clear and precise words in the German radio. She clearly stated that it's an uprising of the very normal common people against those people in Paris. Those elites who are mocking the common people and just can't comprehend while some people have to work 2 jobs to make ends meet. Who can't comprehend that not every small town has its own metro line. Who can't understand why those peasants are still mad. Hey, we offered them like 100 euros more pay, that's a lot for those people, isn't it? Elites who are afraid. Maybe for the first time in their lives they are truly afraid. The day they all fear the most is close. The day where the slaves realize that they form the majority of the country. The day where the age-old tricks of control fail. The day where the police, their loyal guard dogs, will not protect them anymore in their mansions. The day where the common people rise above them.